Greetings and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Design and Manage an Exchange Infrastructure. It's a primary topic for the Exchange 2013 Core Solutions 70-341 exam. The subsection we're discussing in this lesson is Design an Appropriate Exchange Solution for a given SLA. So that's a bit of a mouthful to say, design an appropriate exchange solution for a given SLA. This objective may include, but is not limited to, planning for updates, planning for change management, designing a solution that meets service level agreement or SLA requirements around scheduled downtime, design a solution that meets service level agreement requirements around RPO or RTO, that's recovery point objective or recovery time objective. Not to worry, we're going to define those acronyms if you haven't heard of them before. And design a solution that meets service level agreement or SLA requirements around message delivery. Alright, so a lot of this is a bit abstract in terms of what you're going to be providing in the end. So we're going to focus on the overall concepts behind these objectives. Okay, so let's get started. Just to bring a scenario into play here, even though we may not necessarily need one for this lesson, we've had them for all of the others. So in this lesson, we're going to be working with Avatarista. They are a San Francisco-based company that specializes in custom avatars built to look just like you. It's perfect for advertising campaigns online. Now, they want us to work with them and provide their exchange services, make sure that their on-premise exchange environment is solid. The problem they're having is they want to ensure we will be capable of meeting all items on our service level agreement with regard to things like updates, RTO, RPO, and so forth. So our goal here is to put our client's mind at ease, and we can do that by showing that we have a clear grasp of their needs, of our own written commitments, and our understanding of their concern. So perhaps they've had a bad experience in the past, and so you know how that is. The expression, once bitten, twice shy, applies in this case. Once someone has a bad experience with a consultant or a consulting agency, they get nervous. Once you have someone let you down, it's hard for you to trust again. And so that's where these service level agreements can be very helpful. But we need to make sure our client knows that we plan on living up to the service level agreement that we have with them. Now, a service level agreement is a contract. It's an agreement between a service provider, which might be you, and a customer, which may also be you, depending on what role you're playing and what you're doing. So at times, you may be, let's say, in an organization that now requires you to have outside vendors come in and work with you. Perhaps it's in order to set up the infrastructure, the exchange infrastructure, and so you're not going to actually be doing that part yourself. Perhaps you hire consultants to come in and they're going to transition your environment. Perhaps you have persons that you work with to come in and handle your backup recovery side or high availability or unified messaging. So in those situations, there needs to be a service level agreement between you and that other contractor or consulting agency. Or you might be a consulting agency, and so when you work with your customers, you need to provide the service level agreement that they're going to be satisfied with. Now, at the same time, this is not just something that is used with vendors or consultants and customers. In fact, IS departments in major enterprises, they've begun adopting the concept of using SLAs so that services for their customers, which in this case are actually users in departments in the enterprise world, they can be measured. So the term service level agreement or SLA can be applied in a variety of different ways. But ultimately, the SLA determines things like the permissible outage for hardware or software levels that must be maintained in order to meet business goals. But what exactly does a service level agreement do for you or for your customers? Well, it provides a variety of different metrics, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But ultimately, when establishing an SLA, it's important to properly define the business needs and to really temper that SLA with what is technologically possible and what is possible based upon the budget. So you don't want to just create an SLA that's just all yes, we can do everything, we can do it in 0 time, we can do it with $0 spent. That's not reasonable, and in some cases it's not even technologically possible. So the service level agreement has to meet business needs, but it also must consider what is technologically possible and what is financially possible. Let's talk for a moment about some of the metrics that the SLA might include. So, some of the metrics that might be included are things like the percentage of time that services will be available, or perhaps an agreement that says how much downtime will be permissible. So that's part of what we're going to talk about in a moment, the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective in this case. You might also discuss the number of users that can be served simultaneously. You might have specific performance benchmarks to which actual performance will be compared periodically. There might be a schedule for notification in advance of network changes that may affect users. Perhaps help desk response time for different types of problems, usage statistics that will be provided. So it really depends upon the type of service level agreement. When it comes to Exchange, there are specific items that you may need to include in your service level agreement that perhaps other businesses and other types of networking technology do not need to include. So for the moment, we're talking in generalities, but when putting together a service level agreement for your business, or when reviewing service level agreements that are being presented to you from another business, you'll want to make sure that it's not just a general overview of things, but there are specifics that you can point to and say this applies specifically to my needs or the needs of this business. Alright, so let's talk about some Exchange-specific information. So we talked about some of the objectives for the Microsoft certification exam, and it mentioned things like planning for updates. Now when it comes to Exchange, obviously we have updates. We're going to have service packs that will come out from time to time, and we're also going to have what are called cumulative updates. Now perhaps you're thinking, well, you mean roll-ups. Well, with Exchange 2007, we saw a shift to roll-ups as opposed to hotfixes. And that's because the Exchange team wanted to respond to mission-critical problems as quickly as possible. Now, there were some discrepancies, some issues, some problems when it comes to roll-ups and Exchange, because oftentimes these roll-ups also included the need for various security patches to be included, and so this could cause a problem. And so there's a new servicing approach that is going to be used with Exchange 2013, and it will be quarterly cumulative updates. So these cumulative updates, or CUs, they will be full refreshes of the product and will be installed as a build-to-build upgrade. Now the Exchange team put out an announcement on the Exchange team blog. Let's jump over to the blog announcement and take a look at some of the bullets regarding these cumulative updates as far as the value of them and certain things that you'll have to keep in mind when actually preparing for these quarterly cumulative updates. So here we can see the Exchange team blog, and here's the announcement about servicing Exchange 2013. As we scroll down, you can see some of the primary benefits to customers that were outlined. For example, a predictable release cadence, so they'll be released 4 times a year. Dedicated security releases, so instead of merging them together, notice it says independent security releases will allow customers to quickly install an update with confidence, knowing that only the fixes which address a particular problem will be included. So that's a good thing. Data center scale validation. So on-premises and hybrid customers will be able to deploy CUs, knowing that the same code is already deployed in the Exchange Online service and has been validated against millions of mailboxes in the world's largest and most demanding Exchange installation. Improved support for hybrid deployments. More rapid changes to language resources. So these are the primary benefits. Then it says, of course, moving to the CU model changes some things that users of roll-up updates have become accustomed to. Larger update packages. Every update will be a full release of the product, and as such will be a larger package than with previous update mechanisms. Loss of server customization during upgrade. Similar to Service Pack installation, the CU model will not preserve web.config, registry changes, or other custom configurations applied to servers. So that's not a change in guidance from previous Exchange versions. And installation failure recovery. So in the event the CU fails and is unrecoverable, reinstallation of the server will be necessary. Now it mentions no loss of mailbox or queue data should occur even in the unlikely event of an installation failure. But it's good to note this because in your idea of a service level agreement, updates are going to be part of the process depending on what you're actually setting up the SLA for, and you have to know that you have to have some type of recovery plan should the CU fail. Here we can see some additional frequently asked questions about the CU. For example, will there continue to be service pack releases? And the answer is yes, that periodic service pack updates may be provided. Will AD schema changes be included? And it says yes, sometimes it may be included if required in terms of a change in functionality. And we can see some of the other pieces here as far as multiple security updates. If I am installing the most recent CU available, will I need to apply security updates to that release, and so on and so forth. So you can certainly go to the Exchange team blog and read this point here, but it's just good to keep up with the Exchange team with regard to things that they are releasing for our benefit. So sometimes it's new tools, sometimes it's announcements like this where they're changing the servicing up. Obviously it doesn't happen every year. In fact, the last change was 6 years ago. So it's good to keep up with the Exchange team blog because that's where you'll get the latest Exchange information directly from the horse's mouth, directly from the Exchange team. Alright, so let's jump back over to our slides and continue our discussion of the needs of the service level agreement. One of the terms that you hear with regard to service level agreements is change management. So what exactly is change management? Well, it's an approach to shifting or transitioning users, groups, in our case the Exchange organization, from whatever the current state is to a future desired state. So perhaps change management is a transition from Exchange 2010 to 2013. So you have to find a way to outline how this is going to work properly and smoothly, how stability is going to be maintained, how performance is going to be increased in some way, or at least made stable. That same change management might come into play with things like high availability. So you might be working on bringing in high availability into your environment, and so what is that going to take in order to establish this shift from one solution to another, or from no solution to a new solution? And it's important to define existing stability by performing some kind of baseline and establishing a benchmark. So there's quite a bit that has to be taken into consideration when considering change management. You know, when you think about changes like hardware configuration changes, various software installations, introducing new servers into an environment, doing things like upgrading the schema, you know, these always have the potential to cause failures, which can in turn result in costly outages. So by having a strict, well-defined change management process, this is going to ensure that changes are planned, that there's a process that's been tested, that things are done in an orderly manner, and so therefore it will hopefully reduce the risk of failure. So that's really one of the reasons why we need all of this additional information included into our service level agreements. Now, RTO and RPO, these are going to be terms that you hear with regard to disaster recovery, high availability, and so forth. But what do they really mean? Well, when talking about recovery time objective, RTO, the fancy definition from Wikipedia is the duration of time and a service level within which a business process must be restored after a disaster or disruption, in order to avoid unacceptable consequences associated with a break in business continuity. Now, the simple version of that is an acceptable amount of time without service being available. So, in the event your Exchange services went down, and obviously your organization wants to have it back up and running, how much time do you think your organization can go without email? Well, some would say no time. So your recovery time objective at that point would be immediate, nanoseconds. They want high availability to the nth degree. Okay, well, wanting that type of RTO is one thing. Being able to afford it is another. So there has to be some trade-off between the amount of availability or the ability to recover from a disaster in a timely manner and the amount of money that's spent to accomplish that. So you have to look at it from both angles. You can recover faster, but it's going to cost you more money typically. Now, the other piece to the puzzle is the recovery point objective, the RPO. The fancy definition from Wikipedia is the maximum tolerable period in which data might be lost from an IT service due to a major incident. The simple definition is how much data, past and present, must be restorable in the RTO. Now, again, some would say, all of it. I don't want to lose any data. And so again, we're talking about data that has to be available and the time frame is immediate. That's what folks want. They want all their data back and they want it back now. Well, that's not necessarily realistic. So you have to provide for reasonable levels of RTO and RPO in your service level agreement. Now, a lot of that depends upon whether or not you're using a high availability solution or not. So are you using database availability groups? That would certainly affect the RPO and RTO. Are you using a backup solution? Is it Windows backup or is it a third-party solution? What process is in place should there be a failure, a major incident? If you needed to restore the entire server, are you prepared to do that? What time frame will it take you? Do you have multiple servers to restore? Should your entire site lose power, do you have some type of solution in play? If that power were to remain off for several days, how would you recover? What's your plan? All of these things need to be considered in order to ensure you have a logical RTO and RPO based upon the amount of money that is going to be put into being able to recover from some type of major failure. So when it comes to creating your service level agreement, depending on whichever company you're working with, or even defining that SLA and redefining it for specific companies, remember, don't reinvent the wheel. There are already service level agreements that you can utilize as a template. So you might review various existing SLAs through an online search for Exchange Server SLA. Tailor the SLA to meet the needs of your client, but be sure you can live up to your end of whatever agreement you establish. Or if it's a vendor that's coming to you, be sure that they can live up to their end of whatever agreement you establish. It only has to happen one time, and you'll see that making sure your agreements are actually lived up to are essential. And so making sure that there's a clear understanding on what should be in a service level agreement and what is necessary with regard to the amount of money that's put into some of these things, well, this is all part of the world of enterprise exchange. Some additional research that you may want to take a look at includes a few of these different blog articles that you can find. The Exchange Server SLAs and Why You Need One is a really good one from Paul Cunningham. He's an Exchange MVP. There's Defining System Stability, helps improve change management processes. And there's What is the difference between Recovery Time Objective, RTO, and Recovery Point Objective, RPO. So we hope you found this informative. Thanks for watching.